Cold rain hammered against the windshield as Caleb Turner drove deeper into the mountains of western Colorado. The old pickup truck rattled over broken roads that barely deserved to be called roads anymore. Pine trees leaned heavily over the narrow path, their dark branches swaying in the storm like silent shadows watching him pass. Beside him sat Duke, a retired German shepherd, K9, with tired amber eyes, and a scar across his muzzle that neither time nor surgery had fully erased. Caleb reached down and scratched behind the dog's ear. "You still hate storms, huh?" Duke let out a quiet breath but never looked away from the windshield. Neither of them had slept much in weeks. Caleb had spent 12 years in the Army, 2 deployments overseas, 1 explosion that nearly took his leg, another that took 3 of his friends instead. When he finally came home, there wasn't much waiting for him. No wife, no children, no hometown welcome. Just medical paperwork, sleepless nights, and a phone call from a lawyer telling him his grandfather had died. And somehow left him a farmhouse nobody wanted. People in town called it cursed. Some said squatters used to disappear there. Others claimed strange lights moved through the windows at night, even though the property had been abandoned for years. Caleb didn't believe ghost stories, but he did believe people, and every person he spoke to had warned him not to stay there after dark. Before we continue, tell us in the comments where you're watching from today, and if stories about loyalty, mystery, and second chances mean something to you. Subscribe and stay with us until the end. The rain slowed as the truck climbed the final hill. Then Caleb saw it. The farmhouse stood alone in the middle of a dead field, surrounded by rusted fencing and waist-high weeds bending in the wind. It looked exhausted. The roof sagged badly on one side. Several windows were boarded shut, paint peeled from the wood in long faded strips exposing gray timber beneath. But something about it felt wrong. Too quiet, too still. Duke suddenly growled low in his throat. Caleb looked at him. "What is it?" The dog's ears lifted sharply. His eyes stayed fixed on the house. Not afraid. Alert. The kind of alert Caleb remembered from combat patrols. Slowly, Caleb stepped out of the truck. Cold mud soaked through his boots immediately. The smell of wet earth and pine filled the air as thunder rolled somewhere deep in the mountains. Duke jumped down beside him. The old dog stayed unusually close. Together, they approached the front porch. Every board creaked beneath their weight. A rusted chain swung gently beside the door, even though the wind had stopped. Caleb reached for the knob. Locked. He checked under the flower pot beside the door out of instinct. A key rested beneath it. He frowned. Seriously? The key turned easily. The door opened with a long groan, and Caleb froze. The inside looked untouched. Not abandoned. Not ruined. Untouched. Furniture sat neatly arranged beneath white sheets. Dust covered the floorboards, but not heavily. A clock still rested above the fireplace. Old framed photographs lined the walls. It looked less like a forgotten house, and more like someone had stepped away for only a few days. Duke walked in first, then suddenly stopped. His entire body stiffened. Caleb's pulse slowed instantly. That posture meant something. The dog stared toward the hallway leading deeper into the house. Then Duke let out another low growl. Caleb felt the old military instinct return immediately, every nerve awake, every sound sharper. He moved carefully through the living room. The house smelled strange, not rotten, not moldy, almost clean, as if someone had been there recently. Thunder cracked outside. The lights flickered once, then died. "Perfect," Caleb muttered. He pulled a flashlight from his duffel bag. Duke moved ahead slowly, nails clicking against the wooden floor. The hallway led toward the kitchen. Everything there looked organized, too. Plates stacked neatly, curtains clean, even the sink was empty. Then Caleb noticed something strange. A cup sat on the counter, fresh water inside it. Not dusty, fresh. His stomach tightened. Someone had been here, recently. Duke suddenly barked, one sharp, explosive bark. Then he ran toward the basement door. The dog scratched wildly at the wood. Caleb hurried over. "Duke!" But the shepherd kept pawing harder, whining now. Desperate, Caleb grabbed the handle, locked. Duke barked again. Then Caleb heard it, very faint, a sound beneath the floor, a cry, human. Caleb's blood turned cold. "Hey!" he shouted. "Is someone down there?" Silence. Then another weak cry. Duke barked furiously. Caleb slammed his shoulder into the basement door once, twice. The old wood cracked open. Cold air rushed upward from below, carrying the smell of dirt and damp concrete. Caleb aimed the flashlight down the stairs. Darkness swallowed everything. "Stay close," he whispered to Duke. Step by step they descended into the basement. The stairs groaned loudly beneath them. At the bottom, the flashlight revealed old shelves, broken tools, and stacked boxes covered in blankets. Then the crying came again. Weak, terrified. From behind a far wall, Caleb moved closer. His heartbeat pounded harder. Then his light found it. A hidden door, barely visible beneath hanging tarps. Duke barked wildly. Caleb ripped the tarp aside and forced the small door open. Inside sat a little girl no older than 10, curled against the wall, shaking violently. Her blonde hair was tangled, her face streaked with dirt and tears. For one terrifying second, she flinched away from the flashlight like she expected to be hit. Then Duke slowly approached her. The old shepherd lowered himself gently onto the floor. The girl stared at him, and finally reached out trembling fingers into his fur. Caleb knelt immediately. Hey, it's okay now." The girl's lips trembled. "He said he'd come back. Who?" She swallowed hard. "The man upstairs." Caleb's stomach dropped. "What man?" But before she could answer, a loud crash exploded upstairs. Duke snapped upright instantly, growling. Heavy footsteps moved across the floor above them. Caleb killed the flashlight immediately. Darkness swallowed the basement. The little girl began shaking harder. Caleb leaned close. "Listen to me carefully," he whispered. "Stay here with Duke." The shepherd stayed beside the child protectively. Caleb slowly pulled the old combat knife from his belt. Every instinct screamed danger now. The footsteps moved slowly overhead, deliberate, then stopped. Silence. Complete silence. Caleb climbed the stairs one careful step at a time. The front door upstairs now stood open. Rain blew lightly through the entrance. But no one was there. Only muddy boot prints leading out toward the barn. Caleb stared into the darkness outside. Someone had been inside the house with them, watching, then leaving. Duke barked sharply from below. Caleb rushed back down. The little girl clung tightly to the dog now. "What's your name?" Caleb asked gently. "Emily. How long have you been here?" "I don't know." Her voice cracked badly. "He said my mom would come." Caleb closed his eyes briefly. Anger burned slowly inside him. Not loud, not explosive, cold, dangerous. The kind soldiers carried home from war. "Did he hurt you?" Emily hesitated, then nodded once. Duke pressed closer against her immediately. Caleb exhaled slowly. "We're leaving right now." Outside, rain poured harder again. Caleb wrapped Emily in his army jacket and guided her carefully toward the truck while Duke scanned the darkness constantly. Every shadow suddenly felt alive. Every tree looked like someone standing still. As Caleb opened the truck door, Duke exploded into barking. Caleb turned instantly. A man stood near the barn. Tall, thin, motionless beneath the rain, his face hidden beneath a hood. Then the man ran, disappearing behind the barn into darkness. Caleb nearly chased him. Nearly. But Emily's terrified grip stopped him. "Don't leave me." That broke something inside him. Because suddenly he remembered another child overseas years ago. Another frightened voice. Another moment he couldn't save someone in time. This time would be different. He drove straight to the sheriff's office in town. Sheriff Nora Bennett listened carefully while Emily sat wrapped in blankets beside Duke. The older sheriff's expression darkened more with every word. Then Emily quietly spoke. "The man said nobody looks for kids here." The room went silent. Sheriff Bennett slowly removed her glasses. "We've had disappearances over the years." Caleb looked at her sharply. "What?" "Drifters, runaways, foster kids. We never had enough evidence to connect anything." She looked toward Emily. "Until now, that night officers surrounded the farmhouse, but they found nobody, only hidden rooms beneath the barn, old food supplies, chains, and evidence proving someone had been living there for years, watching, waiting." The stories spread quickly across Haverton County. People who once avoided Caleb now stopped him in town to shake his hand. But Caleb didn't feel like a hero. Not really, because every night he still remembered Emily's face in that basement. And every night Duke slept beside the front door like he knew danger could still return. Weeks passed. Then one evening, Sheriff Bennett arrived at the farmhouse carrying paperwork. The rain had finally stopped after days of storms. Golden sunset light spilled across the valley while Duke rested quietly on the porch. Sheriff Bennett handed Caleb a folder. They caught him. Caleb stared at her. "Where?" "3 counties over." Relief hit him slowly, but not completely. "What happens to Emily?" The sheriff smiled faintly. She asked about you. Caleb looked down. She's been through enough. She trusts you. The sheriff hesitated. She trusts Duke, too. Inside the house, silence settled softly around them. Not the cold, lonely silence Caleb arrived with weeks earlier. A different kind, warmer somehow. The farmhouse no longer felt haunted, it felt alive. Emily began visiting often after that. At first, she barely spoke. But Duke changed everything. The old shepherd followed her everywhere, through fields, into town, across the creek behind the property. For the first time in years, Caleb heard laughter echo around the farm, real laughter. One evening, Emily found an old wooden box hidden beneath loose floorboards upstairs. Inside were dozens of letters written by Caleb's grandfather, letters nobody had mailed. Most were addressed to Caleb's father, some to Caleb himself. Apologies filled nearly every page. Regret, loneliness, pride swallowed too late. Caleb sat quietly for hours reading them while rain tapped gently against the windows. One line stayed with him more than all the others. I thought being strong meant staying silent, but silence is what destroyed this family. Caleb read that sentence 3 times, because deep down, he understood it perfectly. Months later, winter arrived hard across the mountains. Snow buried the fields around the farmhouse in white silence, but inside the house,